Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Flat Earth Wanderer. It's your boy Resist Your Programming here. On tonight's video blog, I was just hoping we could talk briefly about history and how it relates to the theory of the flat Earth. So we'll go ahead and just get started. First, I just want to go to the year 1687, and we'll talk about Sir Isaac Newton. He's the Apple guy that thought of gravity, and in 1687 he published his law of universal gravitation, and it's a very complicated sounding law. I'm gonna go ahead and read it real quick so you can just hear it. It states that any two bodies in the universe attract each other with a force that is directly proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. And it sounds a little complicated. All it really means is that anything that has mass is attracted to other things that have mass, and the strength of that attraction depends on the distance between them. So it's not very complicated. So then we'll fast forward to 1731, and we'll talk about this very important dude named Henry Cavendish. I personally think he's one of the most important people to talk about when we're talking about the flat Earth theory and the kind of science revolution, Copernican revolution, and the whole science side of what led to the heliocentric model that we live under now. And so Henry Cavendish was born in a wealthy family in France, and he, went to school and wanted to be a scientist or whatever. He actually had some pretty notable achievements that he achieved in the fields of chemistry and electricity. And I think he weighed the density of hydrogen and discovered hydrogen or something like that. I'm not sure. I think that's right. So I mean, he had some notable discoveries. What he's actually most famous for, though, is discovering the density of the Earth and accidentally creating, or quote unquote discovering at the same time, the gravitational constant, which in physics it's like the letter big G, and it's a number that's used in physics all the time in massive cosmic equations about planets and densities and stars and distances and all kinds of stuff like that. And just real quick, I'll let you know what the actual gravitational constant is. It's 6.754 times 10 to the negative 11 Newton meters squared divided by kilogram squared. So I mean, that doesn't give you any kind of idea of the actual number with the negative 11 after the 10. So I mean, it's just almost impossible to even understand. But anyway, that so that's what Henry Cavendish is famous for, coming up with the density of the Earth and at the same time creating G, which is a gravitational constant that from that time on was used is used all the time in complex physics problems. And why Sir Isaac Newton is important in that is that he came up with that theory about gravity. I think it was 71 years before Henry Cavendish did the Cavendish experiment, which is what we're going to talk about next. And that's how he found out what the gravitational constant was and came up with big G that they use in physics all the time. And so Henry Cavendish, he was in his adult life, he was still very wealthy. His mother passed away when he was young, and then he built these labs when he came home from school that he did his chemistry and electricity experiments in. I think he worked with his dad for some of his life. And then after his dad passed away, he continued on this huge estate of his doing the Cavendish experiment. I think in particular, I think that was in his later life. So what the Cavendish experiment was and why it's so important to the flat Earth is because this is the experiment that solidified helped to try to solidify the theory of gravity, and kind of backed up the heliocentric model against us, which, I mean, so I'll just talk about the experiment a little. So basically the Cavendish experiment is these these lead balls that he hung from this rod. So imagine that this is a rod and he's hanging these huge balls from the rod. And then he has these other two even bigger balls that are stationary, huge lead balls, like I think they're like 350 pounds or something like that. And so he places them in a room totally away from everything else so it won't be affected by any kind of like outside influence. And the balls that hang here on this torsion rod that's like hypersensitive to motion, they're set like a little bit away from these giant balls right here. And then over time, they'll be like attracted to each other and it'll like turn them. One will be here and one will be here, and the little balls will be on the ends of this thing, and it'll like they'll be attracted towards each other. So this will turn, and this little like measurable distance that they turn is the gravitational constant. That's the big G. Like that's how he came up with it. And it's just crazy when you start trying to research. First of all, when you research Henry Cavendish, most articles they like barely mention that he came up with big G and the gravitational constant. I know I was saying it's his biggest achievement, but like to flat earthers, I mean, and if it's me researching him, I'm saying that's his biggest achievement. Other people would say his biggest achievement and what's most talked about online are his achievements in chemistry and things like that. But what's weird is when you go online and you look for this stuff, you look for these for like articles about him from universities and historical type things like that. They talk about all his other achievements and then they like barely talk about the finding the gravitational constant, like they're trying to hide it in there or something, or like that's not really his most notable achievement with like it should be. And so that was pretty weird. And then I tried to find modern Cavendish experiments, and the only ones you can find like real videos of are either like YouTube videos of people in their own house with like a hanger on a string with two rocks like hanging off it that are equal weight, sitting with like near two other rocks, and then the time lapse will like show them come together. Which I mean, what kind of errors can occur with that? You know what I mean? And then also these tiny little already built Cavendish experiments that you can buy, and you can still do them in your own home. So they're still going to be subject to error. But one of the things that they say online that is like why Cavendish's experiment is supposed to be so airtight is because he built it in this whole. He was rich, so he built it in this huge separate like shed that he had on his estate, where no one could go near it, and he like looked through these little telescopes to like watch for the movement on these mirrors and with the light beams on these mirrors and stuff. And so they were like he eliminated all doubt of any kind of like issue with the experiment because he took all these precautions and built it in this crazy like structure that would cause minimal sensitivity from anything. And he was like, even a person walking by will cause it to be disrupted and you'll get bad data and stuff. And it's just really odd when you start looking at it. You're like, okay, we should be able to recreate this if this dude did this back in I think it was like 98 or something, or something like that, way back in the 1700s. If he could do that back then, we should be able to have giant modern experiments that prove gravity, because that's the first time gravity was proven and like where the gravitational constant comes from. So the whole thing is like crazy and mind-blowing, and I'm just like, this dude is important because I mean I'm 99% sure he was a Freemason. I can't find like 100% proof on there, but it's like there are pictures of him. Every picture of him, he has his like hand in his jacket like this, and you'll see. I'll like put some pictures up and stuff of him, but it's just interesting. You start going back and you start scrutinizing these historical characters, and you start finding out that like it's all bullshit, and that just lends to the flat Earth theory. And it's like argument today. People argue that they found that shit out 300 years ago, and you're just like, okay, and why have we not like reproven that? Why do we still just go by what they say 300 years ago? Because some scientist said that it's what we're supposed to do, and the scientist got a degree from some school, when a degree, like if you really think about it, means that you're like extra good at being brainwashed to the you like passed your extra brainwashing classes after you left high school. And I'm not saying like a college degree is good or bad, like it's good for certain reasons for different people, but I mean that's not where you're gonna find real education on like history and probably like history really mostly, and like advanced math. I think like I don't know yet like the specifics of it because I'm not an expert in calculus and things like that, but it just seems like when you start looking at gravitational constant and how this dude found it back in the day, and it just doesn't seem like everything adds up. And then all the modern science is based on this number that this dude found back in the 1700s, and that's what all the models that we have nowadays are built off of. So it's just that whole thing again with like all this compounding lie adding up. And I just think it's interesting, and I wanted to share it with you guys because Henry Cavendish seems like an important character in history, and especially how it relates to the flat earth. So um, yeah, I mean it's interesting stuff, and I think that's about all I got for this episode. But do your own research. Look into Henry Cavendish and the Cavendish Experiment. Maybe I missed something, and there are modern, like really well done modern Cavendish experiments, or maybe all the stuff I was looking for is bullshit. I'm not even. I don't know. That's I'm thinking that it's sourced information. I'm looking at like university websites and things like that. But I mean, I don't know. It's all establishment stuff anyway. But if you want to look up a good thing to look up with the Cavendish experiment is this. Just type in like go to YouTube and type in 60 symbols Cavendish experiment, and like a noted university from England where he I think like taught or studied or something. Talks about his experiment and why it's important, and then tries to like recreate it, and they have trouble, and it's just an interesting video, but it also gives a little bit of backstory. But do the research for yourself. Don't be discouraged. Reach out. There's a flat Earth community out there for you if you need it. So just remember to resist your programming, guys, and I'll catch you soon. Thanks very much. Bye.